Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Combat Chain. I'm your host, Patrick Shaw, and I'm joined as always by Adam Filichuk. Adam, a man I finally saw in person this weekend. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pat. It's good to be back. I know we kind of missed a couple weeks just between Pro Tour and everything, but yeah, and not only are we back, but we've got a very special guest with us today as well. We've got Tariq Patel with us here today. Tariq, how's it going?
It's going great. Got back from Jersey, which was one hell of a fun time. Spent about a week up in Jersey with our team, Matt, Rob, Nick, and I. And the next day, my work called me up, was like, we moved around your schedule and you have to be in Monday morning. So I finished the calling, went straight from the venue, jumped back on a plane, and I swear to God, it's like living a double life sometimes. You come back from a week of just talking nothing about Flesh and Blood, and I was sitting there at 8 a.m. the next morning on Monday, being only 12 hours prior, being in New Jersey, just finished a calling and flying out. I'm like, is this still real life? I felt like I was in the Matrix and dissociative. But yeah, this week's been good. Kind of going through withdrawals, but happy to be back in Florida where it's nice, sunny, and warm.
Excellent. How is that juggling the double life, so to speak? How does Tariq Patel handle all that? Because we know that you are a medical professional, you are a doctor by trade, but like most everyone knows you, in this circle as a prominent Flesh and Blood player. So it seems like you spend so much time doing the Flesh and Blood thing, but that is obviously an incredibly time-consuming occupation in itself. How does juggling that feel to you these days?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is tiring, but I love it. I'm the type of person that I always need to be doing something. I can't stay home and kind of just watch TV or do whatever. I have no chill, much to my girlfriend's dismay. So I personally love it. I am honestly the happiest when I'm chasing that metaphorical carrot. It is a weird thing to really think about, but like, even though I know some of my goals and some of my aspirations are kind of superfluous in certain ways, I like it too much because I feel like, there's a common saying, the idle mind is the devil's playground. And, I really tend to believe that's true. I think if I sit still long enough, that's when kind of the negative stuff starts coming. So I love to just be go, go, go. I get burnt out from time to time, but honestly, I love it. So it doesn't feel like I'm juggling too much. It feels like just the amount of right work on my plate. So I'm happy with what I do, and I'm happy with Flesh and Blood, and I wouldn't change anything. So
now that is the present. I want to know a little bit about the past. No one on the Combat Chain escapes the origin story. I want to know, who are you and how the hell did you get here?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Tariq. I was born and raised in Canada in a small town called Milton, Ontario. It was a very rural kind of town growing up. It's about 30-40 minutes west of Toronto. Gotten a lot larger now. I'm going home actually in July for the first time in almost a decade. So, but I've been talking to my brother, and apparently I won't even recognize it anymore. I turned it from a small, farming town to, just a larger part of Toronto. It's kind of got swallowed up, as my brother tells me. So looking forward to go back home there. I got into trading card games probably early 2002, 1, 3, when I was about 10 years old. I started out with the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, trading card game. Went to my first regionals during the prolific GOAT format, or I guess the format right before that, if you guys know anything about that game. So that was kind of my first foray into card games in general. And then from there, I met, a lot of staple friends, some that I have to this day. Omar Belden specifically, one of the guys I pro in my Magic testing group. We still play a lot, still talk daily. And he actually transferred over to Magic the Gathering, and then I myself moved over to Magic, but could never really play consistently because of academics. I was in and out of university, med school, and so forth. So every time I qualified for a pro tour or had a Grand Prix success, it was kind of followed up with a very long hiatus, months between. And so I was playing Magic on and off for years. I had some minor success on the SCG circuit, and so forth. But when Flesh and Blood came out, it was during that whole COVID, time lapse bend that we all kind of experienced from 2019 till now. It's funny because even looking back on it, I'm like, I feel like the last 3 years flew by. Like, it almost seems like 2019 was yesterday, and I have to like, oh my gosh, it's almost 2023, right? 2022 is almost halfway over, if you can believe that. So I heard about Flesh and Blood, about 8-9 months ago now. It was last summer, so I guess we're coming up on a year. And I thought it looked really interesting, but we were right in the middle of a pandemic. Work was really picking up, and I couldn't quite get into the Road to Nat season that I wanted to play in. But I'd ordered a chain deck. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to learn the game. It looks so fun. And so the calling Vegas happened. Chain ended up winning. I'm like, okay, cool. I got the right deck. By the time all the components of my deck came in, it was a week later. Tales of Arcadia just kind of, the pre-release just happened. I played my first real life event, and then the deck got banned. So from there, the rest is history. I kind of played the next two limited callings. I came 9th at the first one in Dallas, came 2nd at the second one in Cincinnati, thanks to the convincing of a lot of friends of mine who convinced me to go. And that ended up qualifying for me for nationals, and the rest was history. So that's a quick little synopsis of my entire life leading up to Flesh and Blood right now.
And on top of that, you're just coming off of a win in a Pro Quest yesterday. You're going. I assume you're going to Lee now and saving the PTI for Worlds.
Yeah, I was probably going to go to Lil either way. I'm not the kind of person that really saves invites. I play games to play them, quite frankly, right? So I had to use a PTI actually to play nationals, which a lot of people told me I was crazy to do in the first place. But for me, it's not even about winning, as weird as that sounds. Even when I played Magic, when I played other games, or even in my day-to-day life, anything I like to do to the best of my ability. And I have this weird, it's not like a weird ideal or goal where you play like a perfect tournament, right? And it's like, I've never actually done it, right? Even events I do really well, I top at, even nationals when I won, there's always been mistakes. And for me, it's like chasing almost like a high of perfection where I sometimes say to myself, the best events I've ever played are some of the worst events that I finished at. And that just happens, right? It's completely normal to lose in card games just due to variance, even if you've done nothing wrong. But for me, it's like I want the opportunity to play on a high level, regardless or not if it's the highest expected value, play overall. Because I think that's a silly way to live your life. I enjoy just being there and competing. So even if I didn't win the Pro Quest yesterday, I would not be the type of person to skip Lil just to play at Worlds.
No, that makes sense. Just it's about the journey, not the outcome. What was your gold foil?
I'm gonna be honest, I haven't opened it. I was actually thinking about tweeting out, taking a Twitter poll and seeing if people wanted me to open it versus get rid of it closed. I was thinking, I might just hold on to it for years to come, just as like a cool keepsake. And, maybe 4 years down the line, if they stop doing gold foils, it'd be kind of cool to have an unopened gold foil in my possession that nobody really knows what it is. But the flip side to that is, I guess there's only a finite number of these. And, if they really become rare and coveted, people will probably start mapping it out, and they'll be like, okay, these many are accounted for. So you probably have this common gold foil, and we don't really want it. So it goes both ways. So I'm thinking about maybe holding on to it, leaving it unopened for 4 or 5 years and seeing what happens versus selling it or opening it. But I don't really know. Maybe I'll leave it to the public opinion to decide for me.
Don't suppose there's any chance we can convince you to open it here right now?
Not right now, mostly because my camera is not working because I'm on mobile. But if I was on camera, I would do that for you guys. So maybe we could film it after, or I can send you the video exclusively and you guys can post it up. But yeah, I could be convinced.
Oh, that'd be cool.
All right. That would be sweet.
Our people
we'll
talk to your
something.
people.
Yeah, well, we're gonna work on something here. So the legend as told, you did your first event was a Tales pre-release.
Yeah.
from there, you broke the game immediately and discovered Briar, and you have competed at the highest levels of Flesh and Blood ever since. And it seems like you've taken to Flesh and Blood, I wouldn't say more than Magic, but it does seem like Flesh and Blood has availed greater opportunities to you in terms of high-level competition and subsequent victories at those highest levels. What about Flesh and Blood as a game system do you think is allowing you to thrive in this environment as opposed to grinding the SCG tours in Magic?
Right. Well, let me start off by saying I don't think there's anything inherently special about myself. I think there's a lot of great players, in Magic and Flesh and Blood that are doing roughly the same things to even better results. Michael Hamilton comes to mind, Michael Fang, the runner-up at Nationals. So there's a lot of great players, and I don't think I'm special or did anything special or anything like that. I think it's just a kind of a recipe of right place, right time. Finding the Briar deck was almost an accident. I kind of just drafted a really good, or I guess had a really good Briar pool to begin with. And I've approached Magic and Flesh and Blood in the same way. I'm a very first principle thinker. I actually have an article on that coming out on Channel Fireball, hopefully within the next week or so, where I kind of try and break down Flesh and Blood to its first principles, and then you kind of build up ideas from there. And, and I don't think, I did anything different from any kind of game I've played. I've always had, mid-level success in a bunch of different games. I used to be a grandmaster in StarCraft 2 and all 3 servers, Europe, Korea, and North America. I was signed to Complexity Gaming for a little bit. So it's more or less the same process applied to different games. And in a game like Magic the Gathering that's been established for years and years, it's really just a numbers game, right? I think my win record is actually roughly the same between Magic and Flesh and Blood. Like I'm hovering close to around 70% ish in both games, maybe a little bit lower in Magic, but at a very good level win percentage for cards, right? Even the best players in the world, you look at like Huey Jensen, Reed Duke, etc. They all hover around 65% win rate. And to get noticed in card games, it really is a combination of longevity more than anything else, because you need to kind of play enough events that you get enough top 8 results that then gets you noticed. So it's just a matter of sample size, I think. And I've definitely had a good run of luck in Flesh and Blood. Like, I'm not going to deny that, right? Coming 9th, 2nd, and 1st in your first 3 events is just like, I would be so egotistical to think that it was anything I did, and not just a good run of luck. So if we're being honest, I honestly think it was right place, right time. I kind of stumbled into Briar because of a really good, pre-release / draft that I was doing at the time, and kind of gave me that spark of an idea. And then, just a run of good variants has kind of put me in the position I am now for Flesh and Blood, compared to Magic.
Definitely a hell of a start, I'll tell you that. Adam, what is your win percentage in Flesh and Blood? Do you know it off the top of your head?
I'm probably sitting somewhere between 55 and 60%, I think.
Because you're still in your top, what are you, top 5 in XP? Something like that, lifetime? Are you still hovering around there?
Ooh, top 5 lifetime XP? No. I'm top 40. I'm top 42 lifetime XP.
Oh, all right.
And then
I gave you too much credit. I'm sorry.
No, I think the best claim I have is that I was just number 1 in Canada for a good few months.
There you go. I don't know what my win percentage is, like 50% lifetime. I am Mr. 500. That's every event. I win half my games. That's my claim to fame.
So the meta post, leading into New Jersey. Thankfully we got our ban announcement a little earlier than we were initially thinking, and people got a bit of time to prep. But like, how do you feel about the meta? How did you feel about the meta going into Jersey? I know a lot of people weren't, the most happy about it. Even I myself was hoping to see Starvo be a little more dealt with. But despite that, some people found some ways to make some really interesting decks shine. I think, especially Kano being probably one of the dark horses no one expected.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting metagame. I don't mind it, actually. I think it gets a lot more flack than people, or that it maybe actually deserves. I think all the matches are fairly interesting. There's a lot of play to the Starvo mirrors. There's 3 decks that are completely viable, and then plus or minus Kano if you believe it's a viable deck. So there's like 3 good decks in the format that anybody could take a tournament down with. And I spoke about this previously, on multiple different platforms, but even in the healthiest, Magic metagames, because we love comparing this game to Magic the Gathering, there wasn't always 3 top decks at any given point. A lot of the times there was 1, maybe 2 decks, and then there was like weird metagame calls from week to week, which you could easily say existed in this format. So I didn't mind it too much. It got stalled pretty quickly, which I think will happen because the player base in this game a little bit more advanced, and card games have been around for a while, right? It's more of the applying the same kind of formula to a different or a new game, just with a smaller card pool. So I think until we get a larger card pool, we're going to see a lot of this like very quickly solved metagames, and people might be disappointed that their Azalea or Rhinar aren't, completely viable even after a shakeup. Which no offense to those people, but it's a different kind of environment when you're playing at the Pro Tour level than when you're playing at your local armory, and that's just kind of the nature of the game we play. As for Kano, was I surprised about its breakout? Yes and no. As somebody who's played against a fair amount of Kano, I've always kind of had Arcane Barrier 3 in almost all my deck lists I've ever posted, even the one that I won the Pro Quest with at the start of the season back in February. I posted my exact 80. It had Arcane Barrier 3. To me, it's a deck that I think is only good if nobody respects. And I'm never the type of person that likes to be caught with my pants down. So if you were me, or if you were following me or running any of my lists, you'd be running the appropriate amount of Arcane Barrier, and it probably wouldn't have, had some success if there was like clones of me in the room. But the, hedges come at a cost. That's just the nature of a hedge. And a lot of people were hedging against Kano this weekend. And not only that, but they were kind of not properly playing against it either. And we kind of saw that when you watch the earlier feature rounds compared to some of the better players in the top 8 or later rounds, when they were activating Crown of Seeds, when they were choosing to Arcane Barrier, really makes a difference, not even just needing more Arcane Barriers. So it was probably a deck that came out of nowhere. A lot of people hadn't played against before, were playing not so well against. And that'll happen from time to time. Now that Kano's made a kind of appearance in the metagame, we're going to see this like huge overcorrection where everybody's going to have Arcane Barrier 3 for the next year or so until, everybody's like, well, what happened to Kano? Let's start cutting back. And I predict this will happen again in about a year or so. We all forget about what just happened at the Pro Tour.
The guys at Arsenal Pass say that it doesn't matter how much Arcane Barrier you have. Are they lying?
I don't think they're lying. I mean, that's the beauty of card games. I think everybody has their own opinion. And, I could definitely be wrong, and I could see myself being wrong. But it's just Flesh and Blood right now until they start adding level permanence and so forth. It's very much a game of math. And you can actually sit down and kind of go through various turn cycles and combination of cards. So if you sit down and math out what their best turns look like, what's their worst turns look like, and then figure out the averages in between, you can start lining up decks. Well, I'm talking specifically here into, Starvo versus Kano when I was thinking about it, or Chain into Kano, because I was thinking about Kano in the context of the Pro Tour. It doesn't quite line up well, especially if the Chain player or Starvo player knows the correct cards like Wildfire to kind of counter or start Arcane Barriering. The most damage they can do is significantly less than the Chain or Starvo players' output. So it's not that I think the Arsenal Pass guys are wrong. I think they're absolutely phenomenal people, very smart at the game, as you could tell by their Kano success over the weekend, and they're very amazing Wizard players. But we definitely disagree, I think, on that fact. But time will tell. If they continue to win with Kano into Arcane Barrier 3 metagames as people get more proficient playing against it, I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong.
Well, you know what, I I've been experimenting with the Kano deck a little bit since last weekend, and I will say this: I was up into a Prism on 38 health, full hand of cards, AB2 and a shield up, and I still managed to punch them all the way down to 1. So I think there's something there with this combo that they figured out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hate the next like 6 weeks. That's what I'm getting from this. I'm gonna just filthy wizard players all over the place.
I will say this though. I hope for the good of the game that the Arsenal Pass people are wrong. Like, if for nothing else, like, put my ego aside or put whatever else aside, the math, whatever. If Kano is the best deck in the game, and I've said this before, it is not good, right? It is not a very interactive deck.
Yeah.
It's going to lead to very degenerate play patterns, and I don't think it's going to be overall healthy for the game. So for everybody's sake, I hope that they're wrong. Like, forget, my feelings or whatever. Put that aside.
I agree. There needs, some amount of threat of Kano keeps the game accountable, but Kano like that is very dangerous for the health of our game.
All right, Tariq, leading up to the Pro Tour, you the Channel Fireball released documentary footage showing the debut of Team Dragon Shield, which consists of Rob Seigel, Matt Rogers, Nick Butcher, and yourself. How long has been the formation of that team been in the works?
Yeah, that kind of has been a more recent development. So I met Matt Rogers for the first time at the Calling Dallas, and it was really kind of a fluke meeting. He was friends with Rob, I guess, from doing some online tournaments and stuff when the game was fairly new. And when he came over, Rob was one of the people he knew in North America, so they were naturally hanging around a lot. And we actually got dinner the very first night when I flew in, like a nice steak dinner, and Rob invited me along, and Matt was there, and that was actually the first time I met Matt. And it was quite a funny dinner, actually, because I just built the Briar deck at that time, and Matt and Nick, who I didn't know at the time, were working on what we now know as the Viserai OTK list. So it was funny because, we got a couple of drinks, and so I think Matt let slip, or I think Rob let slip that, Tariq has this really awesome deck, and he broke the format, and it's really cool, and it'll be really fun to play at Nats. And then Matt perks up and he's like, "Oh, I wonder if we're thinking about the same deck." So we had that like fun little back and forth at dinner where we kind of both thought we broke the format, and it ended up being like two really good decks that are now both banned. So funny enough. But so Matt and I met in Dallas for the first time, and he comes from a Magic background too. And I can't speak for Matt, but I think we clicked, after the first meeting or so. We think about the game in very similar ways. The way, I kind of talked about it, or he talked about the game, was the ways I was kind of approaching it as well already. So we made friends, I think, in Dallas, and he lost to a team draft to me. So he's in my owing. He's in my debt forever. But yeah, so after that, we became friends. We hung out more in Cincinnati. And then I had him over at the Nationals when he was in Orlando, because I live in Orlando. So I let him crash at my place. So from there, we started playing, testing more for Indy. And Matt told me, he's like, "Hey, there's this opportunity, Dragon Shield, are you up for it?" And, I said, sure. I'm not normally the kind of guy that goes out and looks for sponsorships or does anything like that, because I play games primarily to have fun, not make money. I've always kind of joked with my friends that the highest EV I could make is just not going to a card tournament, right? Like, if I cared about saving money or maximizing my value, I just wouldn't play. But I said, sure, sounded like a really fun opportunity. I really love their product. It's not like, I'm using a competitor's sleeves. I'm not going to throw shade at anybody, but it's like, I used Dragon Shield, for years, and I would continue to use them whether or not I was sponsored by them. They just make quite literally the highest quality TCG product on the market. And, everybody will know that. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I've loved working with them so far. Their products are amazing. You know, they've hooked us up with some awesome stuff. The video was awesome. I had a great time in Jersey, so it's been nothing but sunshine and rainbows and lollipops so far.
I know you posted the 983 Media has your vlog up, parts 1 and 2, so I don't want to rehash entirely stuff that you already covered there, but I am interested in the testing process that you guys went under in that last week leading up to New Jersey, coming into the Airbnb. Like, how many hours a day are you spending, playing cards amongst the four of you leading up to the tournament? And what happened with Knick-Knack Bric-a-Brac?
All right, so we'll start from the beginning, I guess. We spent quite literally from the moment we went up, with the exception of us eating or grocery shopping or whatever, until when we went to bed, we were playing games. Leading up to the tournament, I try and be as open as possible. I'm not the kind of person that really kind of obscures information. And, some people gave me shit about Knick-Knack and, was I trolling? Was I not trolling? And we'll get into that in a second, but I was not. And I was very vocal, even on my Twitter spaces, that I thought the top 3 decks were going to be Bravo, Chain, and Prism. And, in those kind of, representation, the percentages would be in that degree. Bravo would be the most played deck, followed by Chain, followed by Prism. And I ended up being right? It was that. So I was very open, like, this is what I think the top 3 decks are. And in my article, I even kind of go through the breakdown on why I didn't like Prism, which I got crap for, why I like Chain, and why Starvo, took a hit and may not be the best deck, which I was also, I think, kind of right. Even like going into these Pro Quest season, Starvo was, still is the top deck, but Chain is like right up there with it, right? I think you can make a very reasonable argument for saying one deck is better than the other and not be wrong in either direction. But so going into it, like I said, I was actually testing a lot of Prism in the podcast that I had with Tyler Horspool and Brendan, who both played Prism, I believe, at Indianapolis. They were both like, Prism's unplayable, which is ironic because Tyler ended up playing Prism at the Pro Tour. But I was actually testing Prism at that time. And because I, for the same reasons, thought, okay, if it has a great Starvo matchup and I can figure something out versus Chain, this deck's going to be a really good position going into the Pro Tour. Unfortunately, be it the players I play against or whatever, what I found was, just being a Chain player, I could not beat Chain, period. And vice versa. When I play Chain, I could not lose to Prism. It was such like a lopsided matchup that if I thought Chain would be in any form or capacity at the Pro Tour, I just did not want to be sitting on the Prism side of the board. And then, I talked about in the article, I'm like, well, that might be okay from a purely expected value point of view if you believe that Starvo is going to be 50% of the meta and you have like an 85% win record, because even if you're a dog versus Chain, then your overall EV might be higher if you have such a good Starvo matchup. But during our testing process, we weren't even favored against Starvo. If anything, our testing showed that Prism was unfavored against Starvo. So if we're not really consistently beating Starvo, it might even be a slight dog or at best a coin flip, and we're getting absolutely destroyed by Chain and the mirror is the mirror. Why are we playing this deck? Where's the edge? And I tried to express that in my article, and I had multiple Prism players come up to me all week and be like, "You're wrong. Like, we crushed Starvo, like da." So I wasn't trying to, I got accused for like trying to manipulate the metagame, and I wasn't being. But that's my honest to gosh truth. And I lost to 2 Prism players in the Pro Tour itself, but I think I went undefeated against Prism the rest of the weekend, including the recent Pro Quest I played at. So I think my overall win record has been like 80% against Prism, all through testing and Pro Tour and the calling as Starvo. But then to add to your second question, what happened to Knick-Knack, what happened to Chain? So I was firmly in Chain going into our week of real life testing in New Jersey. And I talk about it a little bit on the blog too. That Chain was my deck, and our friend Joel Repta from Canada actually joined us as well. He's the calling Orlando runner-up. So him and I were on Chain. Nick Butcher was pretty firmly on Starvo, and I don't think he was going to jump ship. And Matt was kind of 50-50, but he was leaning, I think, more towards Starvo at the time. And Rob, being a Guardian player, was also on Starvo. So we were running games into each other, and at first it was very much a coin flip, right? Neither side had a significant edge. Maybe Chain had a slight edge, but we ended up making a couple of changes where we started adding pulverizers to the deck. So we were playing like 3 cripple, 3 oaken, 3 spinal, and then 2 pulverized. So we had like 11 on-hit effects. And then they were running like tectonic plate and stalagmite. And just the combination of the fridge plus 11 on-hits were changing the dynamics to the point where I was literally getting crushed as chain trying to race Starvo, which is not a good position, right? And then as a chain player, you also have to hedge against fatigue. You know, your opponent might just be fatiguing you. They might not always be racing you. So the combination of, one, not knowing what my opponents would kind of be doing going into the Pro Tour, and 2, losing almost all of our matches in testing, I had to, you know, I couldn't in good faith stay on chain because I felt like our team Starvo deck had figured out the chain matchup. And I think all of us went almost undefeated all weekend against chain. We might have dropped 1 game. I know I went like 4-0 against it. I think somebody might have lost the match somewhere, but by and large, our record was just amazing against chain. So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to play, if I played chain at the Pro Tour, it would have had a knick-knack brick-brack in it, because I still do think it's way easier to fatigue a chain than it is to race it. I actually think it's a losing play pattern to try and race chain, as we saw, right? The winner ended up beating Isaac in the semis, and then beat another Starvo player in the finals by easily out racing it. So
Yeah, no, that did turn out to be the thing. And now they have with fatigue, they call it fatigue prism, is making its rounds. I know Steelford just won a ProQuest off of that, and I think him and Tyler Horsepool were on that kind of build, shifting right into just a full block fatigue build to stop chains, and they were relatively successful with that. Obviously, not everybody can make the top 8, but
that blows my mind, honestly, because that was the first thing I tried actually when I was Prism, because I went back and I watched, you know, all of Calling Vegas again, just because they were fatiguing them then with Seeds of Agony, which like also just blows my mind, because I don't know how you ever get fatigued with Seeds of Agony and Riftbind in your deck. But, you know, my conclusion was the chain players weren't playing as optimally as they needed to during that calling. And in my own testing, you know, I told my friend, I'm like, you just try and fatigue me, and I won't even sideboard particularly weird. Like, I bring in the timestamps and the eclipses as like the standard hedge against any deck that could fatigue me, be it Dory or Prism or whatever. And it just like wasn't happening. Like, it wasn't close. Without Crown of Seeds, the Arsenal card is no longer a block unless it's a D-React already. So the max they can block for is 4 times 3 or 12, plus minus like 2 to 3, depending or not if it's unremovable or if it's Soul Shield. But even then, it's like, if I don't have a 6 power attack, like if I'm not going tall, I'm going wide, the D-Reacts don't actually block for their full amount. So I'm not sure how they're pulling it off, but, you know, I couldn't get it done. And the Prism players I played against, you know, when I told them to fatigue me, couldn't fatigue me. So I don't know, maybe it's viable and I missed something. I got to go back and revisit it.
Do you think that how much of a factor do you think that kind of you weren't the only one that, you know, pivoted late into the deck? How much do you think that impacted the player base coming into the Pro Tour? That whole unease, last minute decision kind of swap. Did you see what felt like a lot of that over the weekend? Kind of inexperience into major meta decks like that?
No, I think everybody who played at the Pro Tour put in a good number of reps against the top 3 decks. I think it was widely known that the top 3 decks were going to be the top 3 decks: Prism, Starvo, and Chain in some capacity. What I think was surprising was the amount of Prism players that ended up coming. You know, in my testing, I made the false assumption that other people would come to the same conclusions as me, which isn't the case in TCGs. And I know that going back retrospectively. And I told myself that even going into this Pro Tour, that there will probably be like a huge amount of Prisms that will just play Prism. But then, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, there's no way that could happen. You know, people will test this matchup and that matchup, and they'll come to the same conclusions I did. But they didn't. And I believe was there 1 Prism in top 8? I can't even remember now. Or none, right? There was 2 Kanos, 3 Starvo, 1 Chain, 1 Briar.
That sounds right. I think there was a top 8 in the calling. Oliver Fi I think,
in the
top 80.
calling. Yeah,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah,
in the Pro Tour, right?
not in the Pro Tour, I don't
Yeah.
believe.
So I think it
Um,
was one of the worst conversion rates among decks there for how
mhm,
popular it was to no top eights.
yeah. Um, what would you? Is there? How did the weekend go overall? Is there anything about the weekend that you would change, obvious besides the win loss record?
Anything I would change? I'd probably play like one less D-React and one more Elemental just to make my Prism matchup slightly better, like basically
Hmm.
the current list I am now.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, I was like extremely happy with where we ended up on our list. Um, I lost a mirror, like mostly mirror matches over the weekend, and given the nature of dominate, there's just sometimes there's nothing you can do, and that's just the nature of games we play. Right? I talked a little bit about it earlier. Of 65 to 70% win record is phenomenal in card games, and going into tournaments, like I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but let's say you're way above that 65% mark. Let's say you're cracked out of your mind and you have a 90% win record, you are still not likely to top eight an event, right? It is mathematically improbable for you to top eight an event even with a 90% win record. And so going into these things, it's like it mathematically people are set up to fail. There's only going to be 8 happy people out of all the people that went to Jersey to compete at the end of that weekend. And even then, if you're hyper competitive, then you might not even be happy if you just top eight. But the system's kind of built to fail. So the best you can do is kind of play your best, try and strive for that perfect tournament and hope you don't make results. But in that regard, I'm kind of upset with myself. I made, 2 key mistakes throughout the day. One in the Pro Tour, one in the calling that costed me a top 8 in the calling. I finished 11-3 or 12-3. I can't remember how many rounds there was to miss the top 8 of the calling. But otherwise, the weekend went well. I actually ended up day twoing at 4-3 in the Pro Tour. But given how the tiebreaker system works in Flesh and Blood, I ended up dropping from the Pro Tour and joining the calling, which is a little bit not disheartening, but one of the things I don't like about the LSS tiebreaker system is that if you lose early, you're functionally dead. And the way it kind of broke down was if I went undefeated during day 2, I would only have like top 16, I think. I would have been probably like 10th place, like not top 8. And had I went 6-0 and then lost, I would have cashed. And had I lost any round earlier than that, I may not even have cashed at X4 or X5. So it was just purely a choice I made, because I was just dead for any prize that was relevant. So I played the calling. But that's not the kind of person I am. Like I'd really like to bring back tournaments because I honestly believe that variance can happen either early or late. And I like to kind of see that, like, if I lose early, is it because I'm playing bad, or is it because like I just got a bit unlucky and it kind of comes back my way and then I win out? So if it was up to me, I really wanted to stay in the tournament, but I got kind of convinced by my teammates and so forth to drop and play the calling. So I ended up dropping even after making day 2 and playing the calling.
So you're just coming off of a ProQuest win after we've kind of seen the Pro Tour unfold and kind of establish our meta. What do you think? I know we kind of chatted about this before, but like I guess what do you see season 2 of ProQuest unfolding like? Like is it, I know we said Kano probably doesn't have the legs, but what about Lexi? Is it still a Starvo dominated meta?
I think the metagame will stay roughly what we saw it in Pro Tour. I think there will be a sprinkle of Lexi and Kano players going forward, but I think both those decks kind of have rough matchups into the more popular decks, especially if they come prepared or start testing against them. I think their biggest kind of factor leading into Pro Tour was a lot of inexperience on what the decks are trying to do and the angle of attack of which they'll take. But as those decks become a little bit more familiar, you might see them drop off a little bit. I mean, I hope that's not the case. I hope we end up with a 5, deck metagame. But I think ProQuest 2 season, if I believe it's going to be the same, right? Living Legend doesn't take place until the week after Vegas calling. And I think that's the end of ProQuest season. So I think the ProQuest season will end up just kind of being the Pro Tour metagame. And I would be surprised if it deviates too much. But I think what's more interesting to talk about is what the metagame will look like after the rotations. Because I've heard some mumblings that Chain has reached Living Legend, which I haven't actually worked the math on myself, but it's flirting that line. I know after the Pro Tour win,
Close.
and now we have an entire calling season, we have a Living Legend, or we have a situation where Chain can also reach Living Legend with Starvo. And I think if that happens after Vegas or whatever, I think it would lead to an extremely interesting metagame, and kind of one that a lot of the player base kind of hoped for, because now we have a situation where Briar is heavily neutered, right, because of the erratas. We have Viscerai that's heavily neutered because of the last bannings. We have Chain completely out of the picture if it hits Living Legend. We have Starvo gone, and we have Prism keeping in check a lot of the really, old and fatigue kind of Guardian style decks. And Prism's the type of deck that I think is healthy for the game, as long as it doesn't become, too oppressive with the auras, or there's a healthy amount of aggro decks, because it can be hated out by a lot of decks. So like an aggro dash deck, or just even the Runeblade decks now, even neutered, still absolutely crush Prism, excuse me. So I think if Chain exits the metagame along with Starvo come, 3 weeks from now, I think we're going to look at a really, really, really fun metagame, especially with the release of Icelander and then some of the other heroes that we don't fully know yet. As long as they don't push an existing archetype over the edge, I think we're going to go into a format where you could play like one of 6 or 7 decks. It's going to be really crazy to see what happens.
We do have, looking at the Living Legend leaderboard right now, Chain, I don't know when the last time this was updated, May 16th ProQuest season. Okay, ProQuest Season 2, Week 1. As of the end of Week 1, Chain has 808 Living Legend points. I believe it's 30, something like that, for a ProQuest win. Something like that. And then we have Prism is actually sitting at 640. So it looks like, I think the consensus is that if Chain continues on the path that it's on, then it should, I believe there's something like 300 total ProQuests globally before the cutoff date here in the beginning of June. But it definitely looks like Chain is tracking towards Living Legend, and a Prism with an outside shot sitting at 640 would really have to put in some victories, but I do believe at the end of ProQuest Season 2 it'll be flirting with the end of it as well. Going into that.
Yeah, and so I haven't worked out the math fully, and it's hard to know because what is the 800? I guess you said May 16th, so it was updated right after the Pro Tour. Right? So,
yeah, because that was Pro Tour weekend was the same weekend as Week 1 of ProQuest season. So the results of this weekend is obviously still live, so they still have to update that, but that should get pretty close to it.
Yeah, and how do you have the information there? How many points is a ProQuest win?
4. I'm looking at it right now. We got it's been updated to 4 per event, so 4 points per event for Living Legend points updated to 4 points per event for a win
for ProQuest.
Yep. So it needs less than 200. We're gonna do the math real time. Bust open my calculator.
It needs 50 roughly.
Yeah, right. That's
50 wins. Yeah.
The smart people can do that off the top of their head. I'm opening a calculator. We have.
Yeah, it needs roughly 50 wins, or it needs to win about.
48 wins to get there.
Okay, so that's about. And you said there was about 300 ProQuests. So.
Yep, that was pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it only needs to win then about 13-14% of the ProQuest to hit Living Legend. So. Definitely could see that as a possibility. I think it's already won like several. So
yeah, it's been racking them up a little bit.
Yeah, we could easily see it, hit Living Legend by the next set release. And I really do hope that's the case, because I think if it doesn't, I think Chain will clearly be the boogeyman until it kind of rotates. And I think it would be a really clean solution to just have it rotate with Living Legend. Which kind of delves into the larger issue of Living Legend as a balancing tool versus, when it should actually take place. I think Legend Storage Studios should have just gone ahead and retired Starvo now, because I know a lot of people aren't thrilled with the fact that it's living
Mhm.
legend, but it's technically still legal during the ProQuest season, and it's probably going to reach like 1,400, 1,500 points before it actually retires. So it's going to get like living legend
Yeah.
in the half.
It's
Um,
got a lame duck season just to crush more people.
yeah, so I think I'm in the camp of people that would rather just see when a hero hits living legend, they maybe use a little discretion and go, okay, you're done, and just put them in the Hall of Fame or whatever Legends Field or whatever they're calling it.
So on June 24th, we're going to see the release of Uprising. We have the world premiere coming up on the 10th. What are you looking forward to on the release of Uprising in terms of new heroes, cards introduced to the meta? What do you want to see out of Uprising as a product and as a whole? What are you looking forward to into what is actually, we just found out, road to national season right after the release of Uprising?
A shake up mostly. I think, and I've been quite vocal on this, I think there's been too long of a gap between draftable sets a year. I think it's unfortunately going to stay this way. I think LSS announced they're only going to do like one draftable set a year now, plus two supplementals or something like that. But I think it creates too much of a lull in the game. So I'm just happy to get another fresh set that we can get our hands on for draft. Because I think a lot of our player base actually likes limited. I'm speaking from a local point of view right now. And even the callings, I know limited Tales of Aria was very well received. So I'm kind of glad that more limited play will be kind of pumped into the game, and I think the game is going to see, quite a big pickup in the player base as people kind of jump into the limited format and test the new heroes. The mechanics I'm most excited about are more permanence. It sounds like, there's that dragon I saw, and more auras, curses. I think the game needs more of a permanent style aspect to it, kind of like Dash has items, Prism has auras, and so forth. Because at this point, every kind of ability is roughly the same. Everything's a modified nimbleism, or a modified this and modified that, and it leads to very deterministic play patterns, especially in a game like Flesh and Blood, where you start with a very high life total and you see so many cards throughout the game that you're seeing your deck not once but twice. It leads to very polarized gameplay where your bad matchups are very unwinnable and your good matchups are almost unlosable. And I think permanence kind of changed that dynamic by allowing you to kind of present a threat on a different axis that your deck may be capable of, and kind of shifting that dichotomy of, is it a bad matchup? Is it a good matchup too? Okay, here's how I can maneuver things around over multiple turns, which is one of the reasons I really liked Knick-Knack Brick-Brack so much, or Time Snap Potions, because it was a way of taking, threats now and bringing them across different turn cycles and presenting them in a way that may be atypical to an opponent. So I think the game needs a little bit more of that. It needs more ways of carrying turn cycles into one another to kind of present multi-dimensional threats. And it looks like this set kind of has that with the auras, with the dragons and permanents and so forth. So I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Does it do anything for you that you're going to be able to cast a dragon and put it out there? Are you into the high fantasy aspect of TCGs where it really tickles your fancy that you'll be able to do a dragon and put it onto the board?
So yeah, yes and no. So I'm a huge nerd. I play Dungeons and Dragons with my elementary school friends. I've been doing that since we were like 8 years old. Like, that show, Stranger Things, where they're all sitting in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was literally us, like at 8 years old, like playing D&D. And crazy enough, he's my best friends, my two best friends, Jeffrey and Madison. We're still playing, even though we live like hundreds of miles apart. They're still up in Canada. We get on Roll20 every like Saturday morning, Sunday morning. They have kids now, and we'll play before the kids get up, and then we'll just go about our normal day. So we still have like a campaign going.
That is
So I
amazing.
love, yeah, it's quite a thing if you think. It's funny because my best friend, his name is Madison. I know I'm going tangential here, but
That's all right.
I'll
It's all right. This is my MO. We do tangents.
Yeah. So his daughter is now, gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. He's gonna kill me. I think she's 8 or 9 years old. which is now 2 years older than we first met in first grade. So we were 6 years old. So she is now older than we were when we first met each other. And it just blows my mind that A, I'm so old, and then B, that there's like an offspring of his that is older than, you know, what I can still remember. Because I can still remember like our first grade interactions or second grade interactions. So absolutely crazy. But so yeah, I am a lore fantasy guy. You know, I love that kind of stuff. But in aspects of our card game, no, I couldn't care less. Like whether I'm casting a dragon or whatever, I really do think of things in first principles. So I'll be looking at it as like, this is 3 damage over 2 turns for X amount of resources. Is that worth it? Is it not? And I will never be the type of person to play it just because it looked cool. It's like purely, I just break it down, and if it's something's worth it, I'll play it. If it's not, it's in the garbage.
Now, I could drag you down that path all night, but quickly, what's your character? What did you roll?
Okay, so right now I have 2. I have a barbarian fighter. It's only, I'm like min-maxing it, so I think it's like level 2 in fighter, and we're like level 7 or 8 in barbarian right now. Mm-hmm. And I have a warlock paladin, which for like the strict lore people is like very anti-lore, because like how can you be both a warlock and a paladin? But we found a way to make it work. I'm like corrupted and all that. So yeah, we're in the underworld right now. Actually, we're fighting off a demon invasion. But yeah,
excellent.
that's my
excellent. I could drag you down that all night.
So we know you're planning on attending the next Pro Tour in France here. Beyond that, what are your competitive plans for Flesh and Blood?
Honestly, I don't like setting goals because they're very easy to miss in card games. And I'm going to revisit what I said at the start again. I'm honestly looking for that perfect tournament. You know, I don't even care about winning or losing, but I just want to get to a point where I can play an entire event, you know, every turn of every match of every game, absolutely perfect. And, you know, that's been a long goal of mine. And it's hard. It's so hard. I remember when I punted my winning in at the Calling over the last weekend, Nick Butcher was watching me play. And I could not tell you, like, I missed such a simple line. And my brain just went like completely blank. You know, maybe it was fatigue, or maybe it was any number of like stupid excuses I could give. But I missed it, right? I just flat out missed it. I have no excuse for it. I played poorly and I got rightfully punished and I lost the match. And kudos to my opponent. He beat me. And I remember afterwards thinking to myself, like, wow, I can't trust my brain anymore. Because it's a really weird feeling for me. Because like my whole life I've been like very cerebral. Like I love my ability to think, and I love just kind of challenging myself and things like that. Maybe I'm just getting older, but I would not have missed that maybe, you know, 3-4 years ago. And it was a very, you know, humbling moment for me where I was like, wow, maybe I'm just getting old, or, you know, what's wrong with me, right? Like, well, how did I not see that? And I've had a couple of those events like over the last couple of years, because when you're younger, you're immortal, right? I recently needed surgery for the first time in my life, right? So all of a sudden I'm feeling very human over these last couple of years, whereas like you asked me 3 years ago, I'd be like, I could run in front of a bus and I'd be fine. So honestly, I'm not looking for any kind of events or results. I really just want to play good Flesh and Blood and just play a perfect tournament. And I don't care about anything else. I think everything else will kind of fall into place if I can just accomplish that.
Are you going to play Magic? Are you as well now that they've kind of resurrected their pro tour schedule, or are you strictly Flesh and Blood?
I'll play Magic. Yeah, I've never really kind of stopped. There was just nothing really to play for, but I still cube all the time with my friends when the vintage cubes kind of come out of the legacy cubes. I played in modern tournaments locally if the opportunity kind of arises, but like I said, I'm a very much carrot on the end of the stick kind of person, and I know that about myself. And pursuing a carrot is when I have fun, or I really feel fulfilled, as weird as that is, even though the carrot is not real, right? And the whole point of the analogy is stop chasing the carrot and enjoy your life. But With the PTQ season rolling back up, I'll be in Toronto. I know face-to-face games out there has like a tournament series that's also like linked to the PTQ system some way. One thing that I don't like about it is how kind of confusing it's gotten. Like, I've been, from what I understand, in America, it's like through DreamHack. Then DreamHack like sells it to local stores or something. Like, why do they need to make it so complicated? You know, like, why is it a flow chart and a flow chart and another flow chart, but like these flow charts don't line up? Like, if you win a Magic Online PTQ, for example, which is like 10 times as hard as any local PTQ will play in, it doesn't even queue you for the Pro Tour. It queues you for like the regional qualifier. It's a very strange thing. So I have to like sit down and maybe get one of my friends who actually played in the online Pro Tour this last weekend. So shout out to them. They did pretty well, and I think they queued for the first paper one. So they're quite in the system still, and maybe I'll have them kind of sit down and explain it to me. But yeah, I do plan on playing if the opportunities kind of present themselves. But I think Flesh and Blood is way more of a fun game right now, and that will take top priority for sure.
Excellent, excellent. We talked earlier about how that you are able to juggle your work and your hobby when it comes to Flesh and Blood. You are using an imaginary arm to juggle more balls by getting into the content sphere. You've mentioned that you have several articles coming out with Channel Fireball. You are making visual content through your vlogs. You host Twitter Spaces on the regular. How invested are you planning on getting into the content side of Flesh and Blood while you're being competitive, and how has that experience been thus far?
It's been fun. I'm gonna be quite honest. I still don't see myself as a content creator, as weird as it is, and I'm only doing it so far as I'm enjoying doing it. So thankfully, James from Channel Fireball reached out to me a couple months back and offered me this thing to do content. And I said I would do it under one condition, that I had no contractual obligations to put out X amount of articles per week, per month, whatever, that I could kind of write per diem and do it as I wanted. And I think it's been a really good fit for me because, you know, Flesh and Blood kind of goes through ebbs and flows of when certain things are interesting, when formats kind of get stale. And I'm not the kind of person that will write something if I don't really believe in it or if I don't want to write about it. And same thing with content, right? I'm just having fun doing the vlogs, the Dragon Shield stuff, talking to you two. I've just been a blast, and then going on podcasts. So I'm honestly just doing this stuff because it's fun. I could not care less about, how many views it gets or, what my engagement is or what anything like that is. Like, I don't know. I don't care. And that's the way I like it. Like, I'm simply doing it because I'm really, really enjoying it. And if tomorrow it stops becoming enjoyable to me, I will just stop doing it. And, that's the nice thing, of not being, hooked into content creation. I'm not trying to be the next big Logan Paul YouTuber or whatever, is that I can kind of just do it so long as I'm having fun with it. And thankfully, Channel Fireball is supportive of me approaching it like this. And as long as I'm having fun with it, I'm going to continue to do this kind of stuff.
You mentioned that you have an article coming up. What else do you have in the works that you can talk about?
Yeah, it's no big secret. So, I mean, I'm planning on going to the Calling Las Vegas right now. So that one, because it's a little bit less stressful, we're not testing for a huge pro tour. It's Blitz, which is supposed to be a fun format. I'm going to try and make a more of a fun blog, see what we get up to out in Las Vegas, see if I can get some really good footage and make it more of a fun, like, content creator-y, like you see on the more normie side vlogs, and see how that does. My article has actually, this article specifically, the one I'm talking about, like First Principles of Flesh and Blood, I wrote that actually a while ago. When Matt first came over at Nationals to stay with me, I actually had him proofread one of the first copies of the article. And one of his feedback, and not just him, I had another writer friend read it as well, was that it was too like scientific-y. It wasn't your typical, Flesh and Blood article or Magic the Gathering article. It was like it almost read like a science paper, and that's why I haven't released it yet, because I was thinking to myself, well, how do I edit it without making it sounding like a research paper? And I've kind of got to the point where, I don't care. It is what it is. And I know in content nowadays, everything's supposed to be bite-sized. Everything's supposed to be catered to ADHD people and, 10 seconds, engagement, this, that. I really don't care. I really do think this thing that I wrote is something worth reading, and it won't be for everybody, and it won't be something that you can just read once and understand it. It will be something that you'll have to read, 10, 20 times and maybe get a fraction of it. But I think it is something worth doing. So I'm just going to put it out there as is, in its full, jargon form, and let people engage with it and let them not engage with it. But I don't care. I think it's worth talking about. And I think it's a quite interesting topic, right? These are the kind of things that I really like talking about to my Flesh and Blood friends, or even when I deal in academics or science. I really like delving deep into topics. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I think, people that really dive into this game will really enjoy it. The people that are looking for like a top 10 cards from this set, or what would I play next week, may not enjoy it as much, but so be it.
And now for the real hard hitting stuff. What do you do for fun when you're not working or slinging cardboard?
I mean, a lot of stuff. So I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big science nerd. So I read a lot, a ton of news research, or, things that have just come out. Outside of that, I'm a huge golfer. So one of the things I'm talking about going to Vegas is actually the golf courses out there. So I'll probably be hitting the links up there. Diehard golfer. I actually went to the PGA Superstore today looking for a new set of clubs, got fitted and everything. So I might just be dropping $2,000 on some pieces of metal. We'll see about that. I'm a huge hockey nut. Diehard Leaf fan. Unfortunately, we just lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are local to me.
You literally just touched on the next question: is who are you going to cheer for now that the Leafs are out? There's only one right answer. I want to see if you get it.
I mean, it's hard because there's people that, like, my dad is a firm believer, and you cheer for the team that beat you, so that if they, win the Stanley Cup, you can at least go, oh, we lost to the Stanley Cup champions. But I'm going to be honest. It's weird because I have friends that like watch basketball, and they'll watch like every team, and they'll watch the NBA finals. And for me in hockey, it's weirdly different. Where like I am a diehard Leaf fan. I like bleed blue and white. I lived on the edge when they were winning or losing, and I was yelling at the TV when the refs called that brutal interference call and this and that. But the minute they're out, I'm like, my interest just drops off a cliff. Like I will watch the highlights the next day and kind of peripherally kind of glance at the scores and what's kind of generally happening, but I could not tell you the details of a single playoff game after they were eliminated.
Hockey season just ended, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, how many hours do you sleep? How do you fit all this in?
I sleep a good 7 hours a night, actually. I mean, I go to bed at 11 p.m., wake up at 6, and go about my day. It comes down to managing your time, I think. Like I downloaded TikTok at the start of the pandemic, and my girlfriend makes fun of me, but I deleted it off my phone because I look at the app usage things on my phone, and I was just blowing stupid amounts of time on these apps. So I've curbed that, and I think that's opened up a lot of time. But it really just comes down to managing your time well, and I think the only special thing about me is my time management skills, nothing else.
It's those specialties, right? I mean, if you have a niche and that's time management, you're gonna excel through that. That's all. That's what can take somebody to the stratosphere here. All right, favorite food.
Oh, pizza, easily pizza. To the point that I think I know pizza better than Dave Portnoy himself. That guy has nothing on me and my knowledge of pizza. I know, and that says a lot. Let's just say I was skinny as shit before the pandemic. Can I swear?
Yeah.
I hope I can.
Okay. I think so. You know what, Adam? I've never even asked that question. Can we? What's the deal here?
I don't actually know what the answer to that is. Like,
You can swear. You can swear.
All right. Well,
We'll
the
figure it
YouTube
out.
algorithm, yeah, the YouTube algorithm will hunt you down and
Yeah, right.
delete your podcast. But no, I was like super skinny at the start of the pandemic, and then pandemic hit, and I got lazy, and I was working like insane hours. Like when you're an intern, I was literally working like 100 hours a week during the start of the pandemic. It was absolutely insane. And pizza's my comfort food, so I was eating a ton of pizza, and then I got fat, and now we're working it off slowly. So, favorite food, I could eat pizza every day for every meal for the rest of my life, and I would never get sick of it.
Does it matter what's on top, or do you have a favorite topping?
I'm plain. Like I really like, cheese, basil, and maybe pepperoni. But I think
Mm-hmm.
if you just go crazy on the meat, it just turns into like this sloppy oil pie. It ruins it, right? A good pizza to me is all in the crust and the cheese and the sauce, and it's like the toppings are just whatever. You can get toppings anywhere.
what about pineapple?
I mean, that's not a pizza topping, right? So why would you
Oh
put that?
no, he's a Leafs fan and he doesn't like pineapple pizza.
All right. Well, this has been great. No, just kidding. Favorite place to visit?
Place to visit. So, my girlfriend is painstakingly planning our European trip right now. And we're going for 5 weeks actually. And she's like, we gotta go this city, this city, this city, this city, this city. I'm like, what do you want to do there? And she's like, explore. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Explore. Like for me, it's like I want to go somewhere to do something. And if I don't have that already, then why are we going there? So I haven't really been outside North America, I'm gonna be honest. So it's hard for me to really give a favorite place, but Florida's pretty awesome. I've enjoyed the last 3 years of living here. The weather's absolutely fantastic, especially for a golf nut like myself.
It is a good golf state. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I would say Orlando, Florida has probably been my favorite place that I've lived so far in my life. Jersey's probably a close second because Jersey was amazing as well. A lot of people are surprised by that, but Florida or Jersey.
You're a saint, is what you are. That's what you're saying there. Those
Yeah,
two. Those two. All right. Movies, TV. What do you watch when you're zoning out and unwinding?
I'll only watch shows that are highly recommended. Like I don't watch a ton of TV.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to get into a show, somebody has to say, you need to sit down and watch this. Obviously a big Game of Thrones guy. I'm looking forward to the next season coming out. I think it's dropping in like 2 months. The Lord of the Rings series coming out, I'm also super excited about. My girlfriend and I just finished watching the last season of Ozark. So that was pretty good. I thought it ended a bit weird, but whatever. Movies, we actually just saw the Doctor Strange movie today, so I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it. I
liked
so
it. I thought it was great.
people are like, it got weird and this and that at the end. I didn't think that at all. I mean, I really enjoyed the Loki TV show when that was on a couple months back, and I think this kind of played into that a little bit, like with the whole multiverse. I'm going to spoil it for some people, I just know, but whatever.
Spoiler
multiverse theory.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's just call it multiverse madness or whatever. But I enjoy that kind of stuff, and I thought it was interesting. And I think Marvel, as it kind of diverges from like the first arc to the second arc, we're going to see it drop off for the mainstream. This is my theory now, because it becomes less like on a personal level, right? Like Tony Stark, Captain America, like these kind of heroes are very like, you could relate to them, right? Normal guy becomes a superhero, Elon Musk, right? Like these are very like normal people, and now it's getting to like really comic booky stuff. I think, a lot of people, we're going to get a lot more reactions like we did with Doctor Strange, where it's going to be very polar. Either people really like it or they just like, my girlfriend was like, I just didn't get it. I'm like, okay, well, so.
I thought they did the Illuminati a little dirty on there. I hope that's not the last time we see them. Do you think this is like converging into like Secret War kind of stuff? Do you think that's kind of where they're heading there? Do you have any fan theories?
I don't, because every time I've given one, I was completely wrong. I don't know, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm not. I know the kind of basics of the Marvel universe, and I know like the hierarchies, but I've never was like a super in-depth comic nerd, and I'm just kind of
That's
fan,
fair.
and I'm gonna enjoy it as they come out, and I'll just go along for the ride. But I will say the guest appearance of that one Illuminati member, the one in the middle. I'm not going to spoil it for the people, but I thought that was super cool, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
So,
the music when the music came on,
yeah.
that was so good. I got emotional a little bit. Not gonna lie,
Mm-hmm.
that was a good one.
Yeah, I really like that. And I turned. Here's the worst part. I turned to my girlfriend. I was like, "Look who it is." You know what she said to me? She said, "Who's that?" And I'm like,
Oh,
"Jesus fucking
oh
Christ!"
God.
Yeah,
Oh no. Sorry, she's gotta go. She's gotta
we
go.
we have some more movies to watch once I get off with you guys tonight.
Excellent, excellent. Tariq, I think we've covered all the bases here. I think that is gonna do it for our interview here. Adam, you got anything you'd like to add?
No. Thank you so much for joining us, Tariq. It's been a pleasure to have you. This is we like to give our guests an opportunity to plug anything they're a part of. So this is your opportunity. You have the floor.
Awesome. Well, Adam and Pat, thanks for having me on. It's been awesome to kind of talk to you both. You guys are both awesome people. I don't really have too much to plug. If you like me or don't like me, you can follow me or yell at me on Twitter. My handle is Tariq Patel 10. Follow me over on Channel Fireball. It's where I kind of write my articles. And support Dragon Shield. They do a lot for me, and their products are just honestly amazing. So whether or not I'm sponsored by them, you probably should be using their sleeves and deck boxes in case either way. So head over to Dragon Shield, get your merch, because honestly, it's just worth it. I don't even have to shell for it. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
All right, time for my favorite part, hashtag shameless plugs. Of course, we have our YouTube channel, The Combat Chain. YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe and turn on your bell notifications for the YouTube channel. You can find our podcast streaming anywhere that you stream your podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, iTunes, etc. We also have our Patreon. If you feel that you would like to support the Combat Chain podcast, we encourage you to support us through our Patreon. Every bit counts, and we appreciate every single one of you. We also are happy to announce that we are part of the TCG Player Affiliate Program. So if you click on the link below and use the code The Combat Chain, when buying your cards at TCG Player, you will be helping us out by doing so. You buy your cards anyways, so when you do so, if you click through that link, then you're helping us out by doing that. Of course, you can find us on Twitter. You can find myself at Pat Smash Good. You can find Adam here at Fomtoolery TCG, and you can find the Combat Chain at the Combat Chain. All right, and we have one last thing that we like to do with our guests. We close out the show every week by saying, "Until next time," and then all three of us in unison say, "We are closing the Combat Chain," and we do it nice and cheesy. So if you would humor us, we would like to do that with you.
Yeah, let's do it. We're closing the Combat Chain.
Yep. So okay. I'll say until next week, and then we're all going to say, "We are closing the Combat Chain."
All right, let's do it. Yep.
Okay. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for us. And thank you, Tariq, for coming on. And until next week, we're closing the Combat Chain. It's like a symphony in my ears. It's beautiful.